In this video I'm going to convince you to go back in time, do whatever you want with your grandfather, and it won't break the universe. I know this is not about the study that recently came out about the grandfather paradox that everybody does videos about. It is what inspired me to do that video though. But before we come to my theory, just really short. The new paper that came out basically says the same thing as I do, solving the grandfather paradox and making paradox-free backwards time travel possible. The way they solve it is they really don't. They're basically saying what some movies have picked up. If you change something in time, if you go back in time and save somebody from dying, in order to have the same future, he will die eventually. Is this some sort of magic then? Then the universe has a destiny. You're basically cursed. If I save you, you will die some other way. Well, the reasoning behind that is that there is a possibility that you go back in time, save someone from dying. Even though you changed that, there could be a thing. It's not like this has to happen, but it could happen that the future will evolve exactly the same way as it has before in order for you to be incentivized to go back and do that thing. It basically says there could be something else happening. It had to happen basically to have the same future. The paper has somewhat the same solution that I did in my last time travel video. Today, however, I'm going to tell you that there is a better way to look at this. Now, obviously, this comes down to what is time and what is time travel. So one theory is that basically all times exist at the same time, and we basically just experience this as an arrow of time or a direction of time because we can remember past things but not the future things. I want you to look at time as the change of matter. You could have a particle that does a certain thing in a second, and if you reverse everything that has happened in that second, the particle would basically have traveled back in time. The movie Tenet that just came out had things that were traveling backwards in time, revolving backwards, kind of like that. If you could reverse everything that happens in the universe in the same way it happened, you would reverse time. Now, if you find a way to somehow exclude yourself from that, say you go into a time machine, bubble, and then you reverse everything somehow magically, reverse everything that happened in the universe for the last 100 years. Once you step out of your bubble, you would find a world that is the world 100 years ago. You would have essentially traveled back in time. Now the question becomes, what happens if you stop your grandfather from meeting your grandmother? Do you stop existing? Is the universe gonna collapse because this really couldn't happen because then you would have no motivation to travel back in time? No, there is no reason for that. Look at it. You just reversed the whole world and excluded yourself. What happens now is the world is gonna move on in the normal direction again, and everything is gonna happen, what is gonna happen, and you are in addition to that world now. If you would change nothing, everything would evolve like it has happened. A new you would be created, so there would be two yous. So is this a new timeline then? A completely changed timeline? And if you go back to your time, what happens then? Well, the way you go back in time, forward travel in time, we all travel forward in time, is you do nothing. You've traveled forward in time. Maybe you can freeze yourself, stop your particles from traveling forward in time, but let everything else travel forward in time. Then after you step out of your bubble again, you would find again a world that has traveled forward in time out of your perspective. And what world would that be? It would be a different world. It would be, if you stopped your grandfather from meeting your grandmother, it's a possibility somehow they could meet later, but it's not inevitability. There is no need for this future, this new world, to have a you that travels back in time. Because really, there was no time travel. You just reversed the whole world. It is a new world. It's the same world, you could say. So does your timeline disappear then? How could you then travel back in time? Well, your timeline, until the point you move back in time, still exists in the world where all time exists at once. There's no paradox here. Timeline until you travel back in time exists. In the moment you travel back in time, however, your timeline stops. Why? Because you stopped it. You changed the whole universe to go backward in time. That's the end of your timeline. You destroyed basically everything in the universe and reverted it backwards to a point. Now that timeline is not gonna coexist and go further. This is stopped. But the new timeline goes further and probably without you being born. There's no need for you to be born and go back in time because this is a new time. You probably don't have any particles in yourself now to the point when you were born or even conceived. Your particles, when you reverted the universe, are missing out of the universe. So I'm not sure if that's gonna work out. It would be a slightly different world because of that. Does this solve the where are all the time travelers paradox? Not really. If this would be possible at some point in time, there would be all sorts of time travelers always revert. The world would go on, then some time traveler would come up with the idea to go back, and the world would revert back and go on, go on, go on. And then at some certain other point, a time traveler would come up with the idea to revert the world back. Now this would hurt the world from going forward after a certain point. We will basically be all in a time loop with slightly different variations of that time.